Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast, and we are officially back in the world of football. Yes, it was the Hall of Fame game. It was the Hall of Fame game, but boy, football is back. As always, I'm Brendan. Joining me, as always, is Sterling. How you doing today, my friend? Knowing that we have football back.
It's back, baby. Football's back. We're good.
We are so
We are
fucking
Gucci.
back.
Yeah. You know, and you know me, I don't really care about preseason, but that is, you know, it's the moment. It's back. Like, that tells us that we're on the road back to regular season football. You know, we got a month of preseason games and then we're good to go.
Yeah, and you know, it is terrible as, you know, the preseason games are, and you always hear me talk every single year. I think the perfect way to have the preseason is you have the Hall of Fame game, you have a week of preseason games everyone plays, you have a bye week, then you have another week of preseason games, and then you have another bye week, which they already have, because that just makes it so that you only play 2 preseason games, you get more practice time, and I think every team that you play one away game, you play one home game for the entire week, joint practices with the team that you're going up against, so that way you can kind of get that little bit more of competitive balance with some of the starters, so they get more reps, but it's in a practice environment. That's the way to do preseason, and I think, and I hope, I should say, that the NFL goes down that road eventually into the future. And I know Goodell wants to do just 2 preseason games anyways going forward, but it's just so nice to have it back. Like, I was watching that game on Thursday night. Again, Bears fan, I'm going to watch every Bears game that I physically can. I don't care if it's the Hall of Fame game. Like, you're essentially just watching the best football product we have seen since January. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, yeah, sure, there's been the USFL on, there's been the CFL on, but that Hall of Fame game was the best product of football that we have seen since the Super Bowl. And it was second strings and third strings. We had a couple of starters from each of the team, or former starters from each of the teams, go in there and get some plays. And you could see the guys that were former starters going out there. Like, Khalil Herbert played in that game, and every single time he got a rush, it was like, okay, like, this guy should not be out here against these guys because he's a little too good.
Yeah. But I mean, that's sort of the point, is having those second and third stringers that were starters out there. You know, because that helps the other team with their defense going, oh, okay, these guys cannot hang with somebody who's no longer a starter. There's no way they're going to hang with a starter. And so they're not going to make our starting lineup, and they might not even make the 53-man roster. But it's nice because you see guys that just ball out and come out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, man, this guy might make the team, and you weren't necessarily thinking of him. You know, you think to many years ago, and that's where guys like Victor Cruz made their names. You know, like, it was, they got their shot in preseason, and it's like, holy crap, this guy can ball, and then he made the team and became
he just continued to do
wide
it.
receiver too. You know, like, it's you find gems in these preseason games.
And it's not to say that you can't look at a guy that, you know, starts out into the preseason and then doesn't become an eventual starter. I look at the Bears finding Jack Sanborn, one of their linebackers, a couple years ago. This was a kid, undrafted free agent, came in, just destroyed the preseason. And it was, you need to keep this guy on your roster, because is he a starter? We don't know. But what we saw from him is he's good to have as at least a backup or a rotational guy. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we trade Roquan Smith away that particular season, and Jack Sanborn comes in, and it's almost like you didn't miss a beat. Again, you didn't have necessarily the leadership of or the other stuff with Roquan, but you didn't feel like you lost anything on that defense, and he's still a contributor on this defense alongside with Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Honestly, that's probably the best middle linebacker, or that's probably the best linebacking core in football right now, because you have, two Pro Bowlers in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, both there, and then Jack Sanborn comes in as he would probably be most teams' second or third middle linebacker. And
Yeah.
he just so happens to be the third linebacker for the Bears behind those two guys. And so those are the types of guys that you can find. I always remind myself when we see, the wide receivers, for instance, like Colin Johnson, who, he made the 3 catches, the 2 touchdowns, and, had a highlight reel catch that wasn't for a touchdown. It's like, okay, he's 6'6", 210 pounds, and he's going up against third string guys. That's the type of dude that you should be seeing those types of plays on. He's not going to catch the ball over the middle. He's going to be on the outside. You're just going to put the ball up high and hope that he's going to get it. And Brett Rippon was smart enough to just be able to place the ball there. And
Yep.
it's the entire excitement of going like, oh, did we found our next Megatron? Like it's like, no, we didn't. I
No.
think he should make the team, but it's
Well,
one of those
that's
things where it's like, okay, like he's gonna be hopefully a good special teamers.
Well, and not only special teamer. I mean, like you've got a lot of talent at wide receiver, yes, but I mean, those guys are going to be rotating out, getting double covered, getting press coverage, and a guy like that can come in, and the fact that he's able to make plays like that is a good thing, because that just opens up another window where you go, okay, well, like they found a way to shut down Romo Dunze this game, and Keenan Allen just doesn't seem to have that step today, and it's allowing them to double team DJ Moore, and you go, okay, well, we've got this other guy, let's send him on a just streak route, throw the ball up and see what he can do, because he is, like you said, 6'6", 210 pounds. He's a beast.
Yeah,
So he can
it's a
go up
big
and
big
win
body.
those 5-point balls, and if you end up in situations where you've got a Hail Mary at the end of the game as well, he'll be a good person to have out there for something like that as well. So yeah, I hope he does make your team, because he could be a sneaky good option when things just aren't clicking for those other players, because we've seen it. Even the best of the best aren't perfect for 18 games a year.
Oh, 100%. And he was with the Bears last season as a practice squad guy, so he's kind of already been in the organization. And if he doesn't end up making the team, he will be a practice squad player for the Bears. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but yeah, it was fun for, the game that we got to saw. Bears win. Bears are the only team in the NFL with a win right now, so just give us the Lombardi. Give us the Lombardi trophy.
I saw a couple of funny stats about that, actually. Because the game was suspended, there were some people that were betting on that game. But apparently, because it was under 55 minutes long, it did not count as a win in the sports bettor books. It was a push.
Yep.
And so there were a lot of angry bettors that were not able to cash their ticket. And then on the Lombardi trophy side of that, there has, like, never in history has the winner of the Hall of Fame game won the Super Bowl the same year.
Yeah.
And so I would say, unfortunately, get ready for next year, I guess.
Yeah, but there's also a stat with the Bears. The 4 times that they have played in the Hall of Fame game, every single time they've played, they've gone on to make the playoffs. So.
Oh, and I mean, I have no doubt there. I feel like your Bears are making the playoffs this year, but
so.
Winning that game might have just ended your hopes of winning the Super Bowl. So it's
you know me. I never had aspirations of winning a Super Bowl this year. I look at this and go, if we make the playoffs, that's good. I'm happy with that. I don't care if we win or lose that playoff game. I'd be a lot happier if we won that game for sure. But it's one of those things where I can sit back and go, made the playoffs, baby. This was a team that was unwatchable 2 seasons ago. This was a team that was unwatchable for the first half of last year. And now we're in the playoffs. I will take that. But
that's fair. And I mean, I didn't watch this whole game. I was at work during the game. I did come home and throw it on the small screen and sort of flip through and sort of fast watch it and watch some parts. I think the thing that a lot of people were watching in this first game
Kickoff.
was the new kickoff rules. That was a big thing, a big focal point from the crew that was calling it and just for the NFL as a whole. Making sure to mark out the field where the acceptable landing zones are and showing how the teams have to line up now. The fact that we have a placeholder who his sole job is to hold the ball and then grab that tee and get his ass off the field. That's a unique addition as well to see. So I was curious to see that because there's been a lot of talk this offseason of how this new kickoff's going to work, and I'm excited for it because the way the kick game has gone in the last few years, it's 98% of the time it's a touchback. And we were going towards this realm of we're never going to see another Devin Hester again because they don't get the opportunity to do that. Unless a guy gets really gutsy and is like, oh, I'm going to try to return every kick for a 107-yard touchdown. And it's like, you're going to get cut from your team as soon as that doesn't work twice in a row. You're
Yeah.
going to get fired. So I'm happy for this because this might make a bit more strategy finally go into the special teams, and we could see special teams winning games again.
I know a lot of people were fairly underwhelmed with this new with the new, but I look at it and I go, it was a 1 game sample, and again,
Exactly.
we're probably gonna see a lot more of kind of like the longest that it got out to was like I think the 33-yard line for the kick return. We're probably going to see a lot of those. It's not going to be as exciting as everyone thinks it's going to be, but it's going to allow more kick returns and it's going to be more exciting than just going like, okay, here comes the kick and commercial break.
Well, exactly. It gives us something to look forward to because as you said, it's a 1 game sample. So yeah, great. 1 game out of 1 game, nobody broke it to go yard.
Yeah.
But we're going to see that eventually, and
Yeah.
that's going to excite people when it happens. And then we're also going to see some teams try unique things. We're going to see kickers start to try squib and pooch kicks to land the ball in that acceptable zone, but away from the returner so that it maybe bounces towards the end zone or
Yeah.
something.
If it
We're
rolls
gonna
into
see
the end zone, then
unique.
it's only going to the 20-yard line as opposed to the 30. And
Well, yeah, because anybody who doesn't know that's what it is. If it is a full touchback into the end zone or further, the team gets the ball at the 20. If you get it into what was
if
it?
you kick the ball into the end zone, then it goes out to the 30. If you kick it into the zone that they kind of have the players in and it rolls into the end zone, it only goes out to the 20. So essentially what they're saying is they're
I think
basically
you have to go
looking
back.
no, no. So if it rolls into the end zone, it goes to the 20 because it
No,
landed inside the actual zone.
right.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
they're basically saying we want to discourage teams from kicking it into the back of the end zone because that has been what it's been these last few years, and it's like we're going to allow teams to go to the 30 if you do this. So
Mhm.
if you're a confident team with your defense, sure, punt it into the back of the end zone, but if you want to try to get it and stop them into that little zone because they're in these area of like the goal line to I think the 10-yard line if I'm remembering correctly, and they all line up on the 40 and 45.
Yeah.
But if it
Yeah,
lands
like we
in
said,
that
it's only
zone,
been 1 game sample, so we haven't seen it a lot yet either. So we're still
exactly.
learning about it as well. The one interesting one too is when teams start getting more experimental with it, there's also if you kick it and the ball lands short of that acceptable zone, then it comes out to the 40
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
which is going to be very interesting to see, when the first teams start experimenting with that and how quickly do they retract and go, never mind, we don't want to experiment with that anymore.
Yeah, this preseason with the kickoff rule, I think is probably going to be one of the most exciting things that we're going to see because again, we didn't have to have the holder out there for the Hall of Fame game, but it
Mhm.
was like, okay, we might as well try this because it is preseason. These literally do not matter. And so we'll see teams, kick it into the back of the end zone and test their defense. And we'll see teams, allow that 40-yarder where they either kick it out of bounds or they kick it short of the area. And it's going to be really interesting to say the least this first, these next 3 weeks of preseason, just because you're going to be able to get to see some of these unique kicks. And again, this is only a 1-year rule for the NFL that has basically option of extending it, but it's essentially the NFL saying, guys, we're trying something. We know that this play is the biggest sleeper play in football now. It used to be one of the most exciting plays where you literally, the guy that went into the Hall of Fame this year, you mentioned him, Devin Hester, brought a tear to my eye, when he actually got announced, because I've been calling for it the last 2 years to say that he should be. And it was when that guy was lining up for a kick return, you did not leave your television. If you had to pee, you waited till the offense got onto the field because you weren't missing that, dude. We want to see that come back to the NFL, and this is kind of what they're trying, and I hope it works. I was all for this rule.
Me too. Honestly, even with only the 1-game sample, I like it. And I hope that they do extend it, because it's a step in the right direction. Even if they tweak it in some ways, extend the zone or something, make it, just make it so teams can be more creative with it, fine. But just, I don't want to see them go back to what it was.
Yeah, the only way that I could agree that if it just goes back the other way is if, for instance, teams just look at it and go, we were already bringing teams out to the 25-yard line. We're fine with adding that extra 5 yards, and they just go, screw it, because then it's just going to result in the same situation, and the NFL is just going to go, well, why are we rewarding teams with that 5 extra yards if they're just going to be doing this? And so that would be why I would be okay with that.
I think what we'll see is they might tweak it first and go, okay, well, these guys are still kicking it through the back of the end zone, so you know what? We're going to move them back.
Yeah.
Move the ball 10 yards further back and go, okay, now kick it through the back of the end zone.
And that's what it might just have to be, of where, you basically just look at your kicker, you line them up on your own 15-yard line, and you just say you boot that thing as far as you can. We know you're not going to be kicking it out of the end zone. You're likely going to get it to that 10-yard line. Again, a lot of experimentation throughout this season with that rule. But yeah, first preseason game officially done and dusted. Doesn't matter if it was a push or not in terms of the betting, but a lot of good information that we need to talk about this week, because we talked last week about the Tua Tagovailoa deal that dropped literally, I think it was 20 minutes before we actually went live. And then, of course, about an hour or two after we ended the podcast, Jordan Love gets a contract extension. And then later this week, DJ Moore got an extension. And then Tristan Wirfs also got an extension. So we're going to be kind of talking about all those. But the first guy that we should talk about is the Green Bay Packers new signal caller, or I guess second year signal caller, Jordan Love, getting a 4-year, $220 million contract extension, tying him for the most amount of money to a quarterback in the NFL, alongside Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, ahead of Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little ridiculous at this point. These teams are signing these young quarterbacks to big contracts that haven't won anything. What was the stat that we saw? It was something like the top 8 paid quarterbacks now, not a single one of them have won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, one has made it to a Super Bowl.
Well, I think they're 0-3 in the Super Bowl.
Yes, because we've had Joe Burrow in a Super Bowl, we've had Jared Goff in a Super Bowl, and I need to look at the official top 8 again. But I know for a fact there's 2 guys that have made it to Super Bowl that haven't, and I look at that and I go, Joe Burrow and Jared Goff, I think they're deserving of their contracts. We saw with Joe Burrow, again, we both think he's the second best quarterback in the league when healthy. And he's kind of been the only guy in the NFL that's not named Tom Brady that has actually been able to compete with Patrick Mahomes. And then with Jared Goff, he was there with the Rams with Sean McVay, and he's just shown that he's kind of that guy moving forward. And we talked about it with Trevor Lawrence, where we said there's no reason for him to be tied with Joe Burrow for the highest paid contract guy, because he's a guy that was, his rookie year, it's a write-off year. That was Urban Meyer. That was just complete wash. His second year, he was a good quarterback. We wanted to see this last year, him going from being a good quarterback to being a great quarterback. He didn't take that step, whether that was due to injuries on his part or that was just because he couldn't take that next step or next level. We don't really know. But we looked at it and said it's probably too early for him to get that type of deal, because he hasn't shown that he can be that type of player. And then we talked about Tua last week, where we went, you know what? He is a great quarterback. But is he a guy that you win because of, or you can just is he a guy that you can win with or because of? And we both agree that you can win with Tua, but you're not going to win because of Tua. And then now we look at Jordan Love and we go, this was a guy last year that was pretty good. It makes me almost vomit saying those words, but Jordan Love was a good quarterback last year. He had his struggles early, but he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the back half of the year. He really was.
Yep.
But it's a 1-year sample, and you're giving him $220 million, and I'm trying to see how much.
$100 million guaranteed.
What was it? Just $100 million guaranteed, or what?
Half the contract was guaranteed. $100 million guaranteed, $55 million a year. It's just these teams. They haven't won anything with these quarterbacks, and they are essentially selling their future because of this. Because what's going to happen? Like, they're not going to be able to put a good product on the field around these players because they're spending so much on the one position. And then what's going to happen is that as soon as they have a losing record season, or they don't win 12, 13 games, the fans are going to turn on these guys, and it's going to start getting ugly. Like, it's getting to be too much, in my opinion. There's too much overpayment of these players when they haven't won anything yet.
Yeah.
Especially when you look like a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and he's like the 13th highest paid quarterback or something like that. And well, yeah, dude's got what, 4 Super Bowls now?
He's been to 4 Super Bowls and he's won 3.
Or won 3.
Yeah.
So,
and he has an MVP award, if not 2 MVP awards. But yeah, like that's the guy that you have to. And granted, Mahomes signed his deal a couple years ago, and so
yeah.
And we always talk about, you want to sign your players sooner rather than later, because every single year the price always goes up, because the NFL, you're allowed to have more salary cap, and I understand why these players are asking for more, because the business side of the NFL is getting more money and getting more revenue. It's just you and I mostly look at it in terms of what have you shown us to deserve that? Because the official numbers for Jordan Love, $20 million, $55 million per year, $155 million guaranteed with a $75 million signing bonus. And I look at that and I go, yes, the Green Bay Packers, they're a young team. They were the youngest offense in the league last year, and that's why I can understand they go, we can probably afford to get away with this for a little bit. But the problem is that, like, you're looking at a guy that was essentially a rookie last year. Yes, he was in the NFL for these last couple years, but it's a 1-year sample. Yeah. That's like if the Bears this year looked at Caleb Williams and he threw for 30 passing touchdowns and over 4,000 yards and said, we're going to give you a $500 million contract. Yep. I would look at that and I go, yes, that is the best season by a rookie or by a Chicago Bears quarterback, not just rookie, but any Chicago Bears quarterback. But guys, maybe let's wait a little bit. And I know Jordan Love was on the last year of his deal, but you look at him and say, we're going to give you $45 million this season.
Yep.
We're gonna give you this 1 year guaranteed full money. And if you show us that you can be that guy again, this is the contract that we are offering. This is the contract that we will be putting the base number at. Literally just the basement. And if you exceed those numbers, well, guess what? That number's only going to rise. And I understand players saying we want to have that longevity and that long-term contract for security reasons in case we get hurt. But I just don't understand this move from the Green Bay Packers side.
Well, and that's just it. And it's not just the Packers. There's a lot of teams, the next man up in discussion is going to be Dak Prescott because he's due for that extension. And there's been a lot of people talking about how he's going to be up over that 60 million mark. People are expecting it in the 61 to 63 million a year range.
Yeah,
And it's like, damn, that's a lot for a guy that
doesn't get it
can't
done in the
win anything
playoffs.
more than a wild card game. And like you said with Caleb Williams and the Bears, that'd be like if Justin Fields plays for the Steelers this season and he goes out and throws 30 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and we get to the playoffs and we win a playoff game and then them going, okay, we're going to give you a 4-year, $58 million contract. And it's like, that's a bit steep for 1 year of good play.
Yeah, and I'm really trying hard not to have my Chicago Bears bias come out here, but I just look at this and I go, if you're a team, I don't know how you justify this, because we have seen players be really good for 1 year and then completely fall off. Like Baker Mayfield had a really good rookie season. Since then, he hasn't been able to regain that glory. Last year was probably his best season since his rookie year, and he got paid for it. Granted, he didn't get paid absurdly. I think he only got like $120 million contract, which in today's money is dirt cheap. But you see guys that are really good, and teams start to figure them out. Like, look at Nick Foles. Nick Foles had some really good play, and he shows that he can be a good quarterback, but teams, they figured out what he does, and they can shut that down. And I would love for this to bite the Green Bay Packers so aggressively in the ass, to just go like, oh, you got a quarterback that's just good, not great. And he just goes back to being that guy that can get 20 to 23 passing touchdowns, 3,000 something yards. He's never going to get back to that, 4,000 yard mark or that 30-yard mark. He's just going to kind of be a good quarterback, but not great or franchise level. I hope that's what is going to happen, because this is, like, I understand they needed to pay him, but this is absurd.
I know it gets tough because it's a never-ending cycle now for these teams where you're going to pay a guy. If it doesn't work out, he's going to walk away with all that money, and you still have to redraft and start again.
We just look at the Giants. We look at the Giants right now, of them going, and funny enough, their GM this week said, does he regret signing Daniel Jones to that contract? He goes, no, I would do it every time. I'm like, okay, dude, stop lying to yourself.
Yeah. And to the rest of us. Like they're the ones that broke this quarterback market, in my opinion, still. Giving Daniel Jones that much money when he was unproven, and then how lackluster his play has been. That is why so many of these other players, they are better than Daniel Jones. So it makes sense why they're going, well, I want to get paid more than him. He's the 34th overall quarterback in quality of play, and he's getting paid in the top 10. So no, we got to change that. This needs to change accordingly. And that's the unfortunate thing, is because of his contract, that's why we're seeing this happen now, I think.
Yeah. Like, good for Jordan Love for getting his bag. Like,
No, I get that. And I like to see players get paid for sure, but like, it's just getting a little much, because these teams are going to start, we're going to start seeing less parity in the league, and we're going to start seeing this divide start to happen. The teams that don't have to pay big money to these quarterbacks, the guys like a Patrick Mahomes or a CJ Stroud that maybe they're willing to take less, those are going to be the teams that every year we're seeing in the championship games, in the Super Bowl, because they've got the money to spend in other positions. And then teams like, the Green Bay Packers, the Miami Dolphins, it's like, great, we're selling a lot of Love jerseys, we're selling a lot of Tagovailoa jerseys, and we're going 6-11, 7-10.
Yeah, just, to me, I just continue to go back and go, what did Tom Brady do so well to get so many championships? Again, he got paid handsomely. It's not like he was, going out there and saying, I'll sign a 10-year deal and I'll get paid $1 million a season. It's like, no, he was making, upwards of double-digit $1 million every single year. He was never the highest paid. he didn't. He looked at that and went, "I'm still making generational money here, and my guys can go out there and get paid, so they can come and bring in more guys." And that's the reason why he won 7 Super Bowls. The only team that he actually got paid by was the Bucks, and he still won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But that was literally the Bucks going all in and just saying, we are going getting everything that we possibly can for this deal.
Yeah, I mean, that was the Bucks going, we already have so many pieces in place on the defense and on the offense, and we have X amount of money available.
We can afford to do this.
Invested it to Tom to bring him in and win us a Super Bowl, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know, in a situation like that. But again, that was what, a 1 year or a 2 year deal?
That was a 2-year deal that ultimately turned into a 3.
Yeah, but like if Jordan Love or Tua Tagovailoa was getting $55 million for 2 years, that to me is much more reasonable because it's a shorter term, and you're
that
going,
you can get out of.
Well, exactly. I feel like the longer terms, that's where it needs to come down in the annual average value, because yeah, $100 million is guaranteed. So sure, the teams can go, okay, well, you know, we don't have to pay him past that 2-year mark. Okay, so the 2 years out, it's a bust, and then they just cut him outright. The issue is that still counts against the cap. So sure, he's not getting paid, but it's still going to be a cap hit for you. So you still can't bring somebody in to replace him at that value. That's where my issue comes in, is the dead cap that's going to be there, even though he's not being paid that money.
Yeah. Some breaking news, just as we're talking about this in terms of contract. The Miami Dolphins and Tyreek Hill agreed to rework the 3-year deal worth $65 million guaranteed. The Miami Dolphins and wide receiver Tyreek Hill agreed to a 3-year restructured deal worth $90 million with $65 million guaranteed. More stuff to come out here in a little bit. Again, we can talk about that as it kind of comes in. Figured I would do that, but yeah, again, going to your point there with, like, I look at a guy like Joe Burrow. That contract that Joe Burrow got was worth it, because he showed that he can go out there and beat the best in the league. Granted, he didn't get the Super Bowl done, but he still made it to a Super Bowl. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league and was able to go toe-to-toe with the best quarterback in the league. So I look at that and I go, yeah, that contract, when he got that was worth it for Joe Burrow. I look at Josh Allen's contract. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, just hasn't been able to get past that hump of Patrick Mahomes. Not many guys can. It's just going to be, but how many of these guys can we actually say are going to really be worth their deals?
That's exactly it. That's the difference is, yeah, Joe Burrow stood toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen came close as well. You know, I will say he's
come twice.
It was just Patrick Mahomes had the ball last, is what it comes down to. Tua sometimes can't even stand toe-to-toe with Josh Allen, let alone Patrick Mahomes. I mean, look at that playoff game last year. Yes, it was sub-zero temperatures, but
and
the Dolphins
were so injured at that point as well too. So
100%, but still, like, that's a big part of it. You know, Jordan Love, they didn't even get to a championship game.
Yeah, they played their first game against the Cowboys, beat the Cowboys, and then
everybody does playoffs.
Exactly. And then they went toe-to-toe with the 49ers in what was a very close game. Like, I will give them that, but it was clear that the 49ers were the better team that night, and it was the curse of, the Green Bay Packers walking into the playoffs and seeing the 49ers, which, again, turns me into the biggest 49ers fan in the world when that happens. But, yeah, it's Jordan Love hasn't made it to an NFC Championship game.
He hasn't been in the talks to be an MVP. He hasn't won a passing title. He hasn't had any real accolades, so to speak, other than being the successor to Aaron Rodgers. That's sort of the only mark on his resume at this point.
He had a very good, air quotes, rookie season, because that's essentially what it was.
Yep.
But
there was still some amusing, entertaining parts. Like, how many times did we send back and forth that snap stumble that he had last year, where he just fell onto his offensive line?
That dude is now the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, or tied for it. But Yeah, this is something that we could talk about at nauseam. We still have two more contracts that we need to talk about. The one that I think both of us really really like is the one. Well, I know for a fact that this guy right here really likes is the Chicago Bears
Yep.
extending DJ Moore on a 4-year, $110 million contract extension with $82.6 million fully guaranteed and a $20 million signing bonus to keep him on the team for until 2029. So he's
Yep.
on a 6-year deal right now. I
No,
love it.
this was an excellent move because this basically just goes, okay, look, Caleb, you have a wide receiver one for the entirety of your rookie deal. So you have no excuse to not get it done now. And so that this was the best possible thing. And now's the time to pay these other guys. You know, I heard DJ Moore even come out after the fact and go, let's get Keenan paid now too.
Yeah.
Let's get Keenan Alex extended for another 3 or 4 years as well. Let's keep this entire core of receivers, quarterback all together for the next 4 years and see what we can do with it. And I think he's right, honestly. You know, like I don't think Keenan Allen is worth the same amount of money, but if you can get a 2-year extension done with Keenan Allen where he's making
20 million a
15,
season.
20 million a year, I think that's perfect. Because then even if he falls off a little bit or Romo Dunze is lights out and takes that position from him, he's still not so expensive that the Bears can't shop him around and go, okay, well, look, we don't need you anymore. We're going to move you somewhere that hopefully you have a playoff opportunity still.
We'll trade you
And-
back to the Chargers for a second round pick.
Right? You know, or we'll trade you to the Chiefs or something like that, or you know, there will be options out there because he's not overpaid. But then you still have that security of he's locked up.
The biggest reason why I love this move for the Chicago Bears is they looked at DJ Moore and said, you still have 2 years on your current deal. What we're not going to do is we're not going to go into next offseason and play the fuck around game of the, star player wants a contract and the team, you know, they're in contract, they're in talks, and he goes, I'm not going to come to training camp. That's just distraction. That does not help anyone. The Bears went, we are getting this done. We're paying you a ton of, this is the largest extension the Chicago Bears have ever given out, which says something about the organization, and that's going to change here in the next couple of years. But the DJ Moore, I said it earlier, is that every single year the price for all these players goes up. DJ Moore is one of the top paid wide receivers in the league right now, but in 2 years, that deal is going to look insanely good because there's going to be guys that are making the 35 million, the 40 million a season for a wide receiver, and people are going to go, DJ Moore is making how much?
Yeah.
What a steal.
That's what this feels like. This feels like it's a good faith extension. It's like, we're going to extend you. We're going to give you that security. We're going to give you guaranteed money, and you're going to be making 27.5 million a year.
Yeah.
So even now, like, he could have been like, well, no, I want to be making 30 million like Justin Jefferson, like Tyreek Hill is now, and like I'm a top 5. I should get paid top 5. I think he looked at it and was like, well, you know what? It's 2.5 million less. What's the big deal?
Well, even he said it. Like,
up for the next 6 years, I'm getting a guarantee. What was it you said? 60?
His guaranteed was 82.6 million.
Right. So like I'm walking away with 82 million guaranteed. Like this is a good deal. You know, this is the kinds of extensions we want to see players getting. You know, like, no, they're not extending to become the highest paid. They're extending to stay with a team that they're familiar with and help grow that brand and help build towards a Super Bowl. This is what we talk about when we want to see good extensions.
Yeah, well, and even DJ Moore was asked, he said, like, a reporter asked him, like, why didn't you necessarily go for the biggest contract? He's like, man, I don't need that. Like, I was happy with this number. Like, and someone asked him, is Caleb another reason why he did this? He went, yes.
Yes.
And that right there is a big talking point of just going, yes, it's preseason, it's all this, it's all that. But for him to go, I'm comfortable staying here for this kid's entire rookie season, just from what I've seen from him over the course of 6 weeks. Like that says volumes right there. And you hit it perfectly on the head, saying these are the types of deals that we want to see. A good player going out there getting paid for what he's worth, but not trying to overdo it because he likes his situation. And this is the team looking at it and doing a smart move. And again, as someone who's been a Chicago Bears fan all my life, this was kind of one of those moves where I went, what is this organization? These aren't the dumb idiots that I usually know of where they'll leave it to the last possible second. They're being proactive. They're making smart decisions.
Well, yeah, it's almost like he looked at it and was like, well, look at what happened to this team with Khalil Mack and with Roquan Smith. They held out till the last year, and then the guys are going, well, you made me wait so long. I want to be setting the record for being the highest paid at this position now because I've shown you what I can do, and you weren't willing to extend me earlier.
Yeah.
And so in those situations, that's what happens, and that's where I feel like DJ Moore, the team probably approached him and he went, "Oh, okay, well, you guys want me around for the rest of this decade? Okay, I'm down. You guys have done good by me. You've brought in talent around me. You've brought in
You caught me a quarterback.
You haven't fucked around, so you don't have to find out."
Yeah, and someone said to him, or DJ Moore, they're like, you've played with 12 quarterbacks. And, this is one of those situations where, you must just feel really comfortable. And there's some funny interactions when DJ, did his press conference about the contract. Someone asked him, so, obviously you're choosing to stay here in Chicago for the next 6 years. You must feel pretty comfortable. What was it like when you first got traded? And he goes, you guys don't actually want to know my first reaction when I got traded to the Bears. Actually, screw it. I'll just tell you guys. My first thought was shit.
Yeah.
And it was, he elaborated. He goes, it was because I just built a house in Carolina. We have, like, my family is set up there, and now I got to, sell all that. I got to move to Chicago, do this, and this. And it was like, okay, it's a new opportunity, new beginning. And now he's locked up for the next 6 years, and it's very, very good times. And another player that on a deal that I think both of us really, really like is Tristan Wirfs. We talked about him being one of the best tackles in the NFL. Signs a 5-year extension worth $140 million with $88 million fully guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, one of the best young tackles coming up in the league in the last, few years. He deserved to get paid, and this was a smart move by the Bucs. You locked up Baker Mayfield for a few years. Now you get Tristan Wirfs, and it's like you have a solid foundation to build around now through the draft, through free agency. As the rest of your team is aging a little bit, so you need to start looking to the future. This is the way to do it. Get the guys that are really good locked up to contracts that aren't overpaying, so that if things do fall apart, if things aren't working out, you can still look at Tristan Wirfs and go, well, you know what? He's still a valuable trade chip that a lot of teams will look at and go, at that price, for that length, I will trade for him, yes.
Yeah, and he's 25 years old. He's played at a Pro Bowl level the last couple years, and he's just been spectacular. And, him getting that contract, and you put it really great, is that, let's say in 2 years that the Bucs aren't doing particularly great and they want to try to just reset the team, and they go, you know what, we have this guy, let's say, let's just get funky and say the Bears want to trade for him, and they say, listen, we'll give you 2 first-round picks for him, and he comes over. At that point, he's only going to be 27 years old, so it's not like he's particularly old at that point either. And the Bucs,
for that position, no.
Yeah. And he's worth that type of thing. And again, it doesn't need to be the Chicago Bears. I'm just making a broad statement. It could be the Cardinals for all we know. It's like this is a guy that you want to pay because he's such a great player, but you're also keeping him on your team, that if in a couple of years that things start to fall apart, you are going to be able to get a stupid amount for.
And if things don't start to fall apart, then you go, well, this is one position that we don't have to be worrying about drafting.
Exactly.
It's excellent. And that's just it. Like, yeah, I know you use the Bears as an example, but this is the type of guy. He is so good that if the Buccaneers, put out a press release and they're like, hey, Tristan Wirfs is available on the. That's as far as they'd have to get, and 31 other teams would already be ringing them off the hook going, what do you want?
Yeah.
Because he is that good. Like, we were talking before the pod and discussing whether he was number 1, 2, 3 in the league right now. We agree he's top 3, but there's guys like Trent Williams who is soon to retire, which then opens up that window for him to move into the top 2 or the top spot. And so that's just it. Like, he is going to be a top 3 offensive lineman, offensive tackle for likely the remainder of his career,
Yeah.
barring some sort of an injury, which we never hope for. So that's like, this was a great deal. I was happy to see him get paid because I've been a firm believer that he is one of the best tackles we've seen coming out of college in years.
A long time. And he was, coming out of Iowa, he was a top 15 pick. I think he might have been the 11th pick, maybe 13th. It was kind of in that range. He was basically drafted to be the tackle for Tom Brady, and his first year into the league, he showed that he was that dude, and he's only gotten better and better every single season. And it's like, man, like the Bucks, like they did that offseason right, of where they're like, we're going to bring in Tom Brady, we're going to draft a generational tackle, and away we kind of go. And yeah, it's just nothing but like, this is another one of those deals where you're like, it's a win-win for both the team and the player. Bears with DJ Moore, win-win. For the Packers, it's a win for
Jordan
Love. It might be a win for the Packers in a couple of years if Jordan Love proves to be that guy. And, if he proves to be that guy, then it's a win-win. But the fact that at this moment that it's not a win-win, it's a tough situation.
And that's just it. With those big contracts of Tua and Jordan Love, like, the way I view it, honestly, is these are 4-year deals. They're top 10 paid quarterbacks, top 5 paid quarterbacks. So in those 4 years, you both better be making no less than 2 conference championship games.
Yeah.
The Packers need to be going to the NFC Championship twice in the next 4 years. Dolphins need to be going to the AFC Championship twice in the next 4 years to make this deal worth it. And really, I don't know if that's enough. I think they need to be making the Super Bowl as well. And I don't think either one of us, you for sure, because you hate the fucking Packers, you don't want to see them there. But even putting that hatred aside, I don't think these teams are built to make it that far at this point. With the competition that's in both of those divisions, like, I don't see the Packers consistently getting past the 49ers, the Eagles, even,
Lions.
like, sure, they beat the Cowboys, but like, the Cowboys at some point might be able to turn around. Maybe Jerry Jones and the entire family will just disappear into the Bermuda Triangle and all of a sudden the Cowboys will be good again. But like, there's a lot of talent, and I don't know if these guys are good enough to hang with the best of the best right now.
Yeah, and when it comes to Jordan Love, for me, the big thing that I will talk about is I think he was a good quarterback last year. At the last 8 games of the year, he was a great quarterback. He was one of those guys where you could arguably say you could potentially win because you look at some of the players that they have on their offenses and you're like, who's this? Who's that? And they're again, very, very young offense, but it was a year. We know what Tua is. We know he's a great quarterback, but you're not going to win because of him. You're going to win with him.
No, what I will say is that breaking news that you dropped earlier with Tyreek Hill, that does bode well for Tua, because as we discussed, it's, if Tyreek Hill is there, then yes, Tua will perform well because Tyreek Hill will make him look good. If they don't get that restructure deal done, and then Tyreek Hill starts making noise in the locker room, all of a sudden it starts to get a little messy down in Miami. So they sort of had no choice after giving Tua that deal. They knew they were going to have to restructure and pay Tyreek Hill. Especially after this week, it coming out that didn't he land at the number 1 spot in the NFL's top 100?
He did. Which,
he's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if he's number 1 in the league good.
I think the play when he was healthy last year definitely showed that, and Lamar Jackson was number 2 as the MVP, but we both kind of looked at Lamar Jackson and said that was a very weak MVP type season. It really wasn't worth it. And that whole top 100, the fact that you didn't have DJ Moore on that list, you didn't have, Jalen Johnson on that list. I just sit back and I go, like, what, like,
Yeah, there were so many on that list
you
that
had
were just
Aaron Rodgers on that list, and he played 4 games. He
You
played
didn't
4
even have
plays.
Micah
4.
Parsons in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, just ridiculous.
Like, to me, it's that top 100 list this year was just one of the worst things that I've seen. And again, you and I talked about the Madden ratings earlier, and again, we'll probably talk about Madden probably closer to next week or closer when it comes out. Again, neither of us really want to talk about it, but it pisses us off enough to the point that we are gonna talk about it. But yeah, those are the contracts that have really kind of spoke to us this week, and there's definitely some training camp stuff that we want to talk about. Granted,
Oh,
the Bears have been in training camp for a lot longer than the Steelers, but I know you have seen a lot more of Steelers stuff that you would like to talk about, so that's what we'll start off with.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we get more into our biases for sure. We don't watch a lot of the rest of the team's training camps. I know you watch a little bit more of it than I do. I honestly, with the amount of free time I have,
It's
I'm
it's
going to
incredibly
watch
hard.
my team's training camp stuff, and that's sort of where it stops. And even then, I can't watch it fully in depth like I used to when I didn't have to work, 45 hours a week just to survive. So, I mean, it was good. I'm hoping we have more contract news next week as well. I'm still waiting for my Steelers to get a Najee Harris deal done. I really hope that we can get it done before the season starts. We'll see what happens though. But yeah, fucking training camp, man.
Mm.
It's underway. We're here. We're going. We're looking at what these teams can do. And for the Steelers, it's been an interesting year. It's a bit of a shakeup in the coaching staff, huge shakeup in the quarterback room. Really, that's where I got to start. Is it was a rocky, shaky start to training camp because early on day one of the first drills, Russell Wilson injures his calf. A minor calf strain, which thank God it was minor, so there's no concerns there. But immediately that opened the door for Justin Fields, who had the opportunity to come in and make a statement about why he should be the starter here. And he didn't. Don't get me wrong, he looked good. He had some flashes. He connected with Calvin Austin. He was connecting with George Pickens. But this is training camp, and there were moments where it's like, oh, there's Justin Fields from the Bears for the last couple of seasons. And that is a big concern. That is what we thought we were getting when we traded for him from Chicago. We're like, okay, we're getting a project. And well, yes, there are some superstars, some great quarterback caliber talent there,
Game-breaking video game plays from Justin Fields.
right? There's some flashes for sure. But then there's just some of those very Justin Fields-esque plays where he doesn't make the decision quick enough, and then he throws it into coverage and he throws an interception. He just makes a bad decision. And those are the issues where it's like you had the opportunity here to come in and go, yeah, you guys named Russell Wilson the starter, but look at me. I'm shiny. I'm young. I'm new. I can do this. And honestly, like, I still think he could be the quarterback of the future of this team, but I also feel like with those struggles of the same issues he had in Chicago, that is why I feel like he closed the window on himself to be named the week 1 starter for this team, because he still has those same problems. If these were new issues that were developing where it's like, okay, he's trying something new, he's trying something different, and it's not quite there, I wouldn't be as concerned. But the fact that this looks like Justin Fields in Chicago, where he could not get this team to a winning season, and that's the issue in Pittsburgh. That's not good enough. I know you're a believer of, if you're not going to be good enough to win, then you should just lose. In Pittsburgh, it's, well, no, we better be making the playoffs. And he just did not look like he's got quite enough to get us there yet. And you look like you've got something, a rebuttal you have to
Yeah,
that.
the only state, like, I agree pretty much with the majority of what you're saying there. You know, the statement of, if you're not good enough to win, you should just lose. I'm not entirely on that strategy. For me, I look at it as, if you don't have a direction and a quarterback, you might
Mhm.
as well just lose, because that's a better way to get a direction and a quarterback. And with the Steelers at the moment, and I've been saying this for a while, is that
Yep.
their direction, they have a direction. It's just, I'm not sure if they're going in the right direction, and their quarterback has been that's a big question mark.
100%.
And
100%. And we do have a direction. Arthur Smith talked to the reporters this week, and he flat out said, he's like, look, we are moving forward with Justin Fields as a big picture project. He, at the moment, is the quarterback of the future for this team. But that's of the future because there are still those question marks. There are still those errors that need to be coached out of him first before he can be the starter. If we didn't have a Russell Wilson on the roster, then yes, he would be the starter. But the fact that we can go, okay, look, he's not ready. We're going to go with the veteran that we signed to a veteran minimum, that we said we were going to bring in and do this with, and that we're going to stick with the plan we set out. Justin Fields is the plan for the future. They do feel he has the ability to be a top tier quarterback in this league, in this division, and they are going to use him as a project piece. They are going to work on him. And if it doesn't work out with Russell Wilson through the beginning of the season, we will see Justin Fields come in and he will work through those issues in real time. But if, as an organization, we don't have to throw him to the Wolves, throw him to that Cleveland Browns defense, that Baltimore Ravens defense. If we don't have to punish him in that way, then we're not going to. And I respect that. And I think it is the smart way to do it, because you and I have discussed it at length this offseason. We both want Justin Fields to succeed. We want him to be a quarterback of the future in this league. And this is the way to do it, since he wasn't able to come in and just turn heads when he had his opportunity at the start of this training camp.
yeah, and the best way I think I can describe Justin Fields as a player is, he is a super gaming computer with a old graphics card.
Yeah.
Everything about him is that, he's quick, he's strong, he's powerful. It's just, when that process, you know what, like, actually, it's not actually his graphics card, it's an old processor, is what it is that
It's the
it
lag.
yeah, it's when you watch him go out there and try to make the read from 1, 2, 3 to check down. It's,
Yeah.
instead of going 1, 2, 3 to check down, it's 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, check down. Like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the and that was one of the biggest issues that I had with Fields, is just that, just finding just making those reads. And if
Mhm.
you, that's the toughest thing to teach in the NFL, is that if you can't do it, it's going to be really, really tricky. And I read a thing yesterday from a Chicago Bears, not even a beat reporter, but it was just someone talking about Justin Fields. It was like, oh, he's turning heads at Steelers camp, and then the first thing
Mhm.
is that, oh, he's turning heads because Russell Wilson is injured, and they're talking about this being a quarterback battle. I'm like, yeah, like, he's made a couple of plays here and there on tape. Like, I saw that one where he made it to George Pickens, that really nice
Yep.
throw on the one-on-one. It's like, great, we saw that in Chicago all the time. The second that he
Mhm.
got with DJ Moore, it was like, oh, boom, like, this is gonna be the elite duo. And I just look back at it and I go, let's try, and again, I've always been trying to temper expectations with Justin Fields for the Steelers. As much as I'm
Yep.
still a big fan of him and think he can be a good quarterback, it's just, again, I don't love Arthur Smith, and I think he
Nope.
should be the starter day one. I think Russell Wilson should just simply be a sounding board, and if you're good enough to play in this league, you shouldn't have to sit behind someone. But you and I have some of those different philosophies, and if you want to hear all those debates, please go back and watch probably the 3 or 4 podcasts where we've
Right.
we've ended up having those. But yeah, what else you been hearing for Steelers camp?
Yeah, I think this just solidifies the points I've been making about Justin Fields,
He has to go out there and wow, and he hasn't done
and
it
he
as
didn't.
of yet.
He had his chance and he didn't do it. And Russell Wilson's calf is feeling better, so he's likely to start getting more reps. And it's he blew his shot at this point, but he's still the guy for the future for us. So he needs to keep his head up and he needs to learn how to read faster.
Yes.
Simple as that. But yeah, next up, we had some unfortunate bad news at the wide receiver position, which we could not afford to have. As Roman Wilson went down with a sprained ankle on day 3. He thankfully it wasn't any worse than a sprain, but unfortunately because of that, we likely aren't going to see him anymore in training camp or in the preseason here, which is likely to solidly plant him in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 spot to start the season. That's not to say he won't still be able to work his way up the depth chart, but he's not going to be able to get himself that wide receiver 2 spot right away just due to that ankle injury. That is a key thing for a wide receiver. You got to be able to plant that foot and make those cuts. And so that was unfortunate to see. However, Calvin Austin has showed up at training camp this year. He has been balling out and he's proving that he has the talent and the knowledge of this playbook to run all the routes required, whether it be deep, medium, short. He has been doing very well. And he is making a serious case to be penciled in as that wide receiver 2 behind George Pickens. Again, if Omar Khan can't get some kind of a move done to bring in a de facto wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. If we run with what we have, Calvin Austin has been showing why the Steelers drafted him. He is showing that he is an intelligent guy that can get this done and that he knows the playbook in and out. So he has been doing very good. So that is a positive in this wide receiver room, which has been, full of question marks this whole offseason.
Yeah, and for Roman Wilson, he is such a speedy wide receiver, and that's going to be another thing of why that ankle injury is going to be a little bit tough to deal with, just because when you have those speedy guys, you really want to make sure that lower half doesn't get injured, because when he comes back, it's going to be, is he coming back 100%? Is he coming back 80%? Where is his level that he's coming back? And we know what he was like at Michigan, of being kind of that burner that is able to find that next level. And if he doesn't necessarily have that, what is Roman Wilson going to be able to add? And I know you guys have Calvin Austin, and he's a very quick guy, and that's good to hear him picking up some of that playbook. For me, again, it's just Arthur Smith.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, that's going to be the question mark for a lot of the start of this season is what's Arthur Smith going to do? But, we don't see what Arthur Smith does during training camp. So
you're not going to see it until week number 1.
Exactly. So I really can't say what sort of product he's going to put out there. He's been saying all the right things, which is more than I can say for Matt Canada. Matt Canada was fucking a silent fucking mute that didn't know what he was doing. He was too busy stuffing his face with fucking crayons. So at least Arthur Smith is out there with the media. He's saying the right things. He's standing behind his players. He's giving the opportunities where they're due. So at this point, I have to have faith in the ownership, in the management, that they are making the right calls going forward. All I can do right now is see what the players are doing and hope that it's improvements instead of regressions. And thus far, it has been. So I mean that's been great to see at wide receiver that, we might have something in-house that can get the job done if Omar Khan can't get these deals sorted out.
Yeah, and I always like to say temper kind of what you see in preseason, or not even necessarily preseason training camp, because again, there could be stuff here and there and this, that, and the other thing. But it's good to see that Calvin Austin, who's been there for, this is what, his 4th season with the team, third,
I think. third, maybe four. Maybe
Yeah,
fourth.
it's either third or his fourth, and it's when he came out of Memphis, he was one of those guys that was just quicker than quick, faster than fast, and he is on the smaller side. I think he's only like 5'8",
Mhm.
so
But we've seen fast, speedy
yes, we have.
receivers be able to get it done because
Yep,
they're able to create that separation,
yep,
and so they're not necessarily having to go and get those 50-50 balls. That's what we got George Pickens for.
yes.
He's the one that's going to be
He's your
going
six
up
three,
and
225-pound guy
exactly.
that, is both the combination of fast and
Mhm.
powerful with great catching ability. And so yeah, without a
Yeah.
doubt that makes yeah. And
And
what are you hearing from your defense?
well, before I get to the defense, uh, we still have more on the offense. At tight end, we've finally seen some flashes and some improvement from Darnell Washington. He has been shining at this camp. His hands have gotten softer. He's able to reel in some of these passes that we were seeing him drop last year. This bodes well for the Steelers because if he continues going on this trajectory, Pat Fryermuth has just been lights out. He has been the stud at this camp. No question marks there. He is in top form. He is ready to be a tight end one. He is ready to fight the rest of these tight ends in the league to be in the talks for one of the tops. He has been doing so well this camp. So if Darnell Washington can come up behind him and improve his play like we've been talking, then boom, we've got this unbelievable 1-2 unstoppable force at tight end, which with a solid running game and an Arthur Smith style offense, that is what you want. So that is a great thing to be seeing. Are we seeing it because this is an Arthur Smith offense? That is possible. But if that improvement is true to form and we see it translate into games, then this could be a good thing. And it could be the saving grace where the Steelers go, we don't need to get another wide receiver because we've got, two good wide receivers and two good tight ends. We're good. We're set. So that is another positive I see on the offensive side of the ball for sure.
Okay.
On the other side, we've seen Dante Jackson absolutely balling out. After coming over in the trade for Deontay Johnson, there was a lot of question marks going, who won this trade? Was it the right move for the Steelers, especially now that they're hurting at the wide receiver? Jackson has been tasked from day one. His job this training camp is covering George Pickens one-on-one, and he has been up to that task. He has been shadowing George Pickens. The two of them have formed this bond, this friendship, because they've got their lockers are side by side. So, they have fun, they jaw with each other. It hasn't been aggressive or, there's no animosity. It's been competitive and they've been making each other better, which is so great to see because this shows us that we've, at this point, through training camp, seeing what Deontay Johnson's doing in Carolina, we won this trade, hands down, because we now are seeing we've got a guy who is good enough to cover some of the mid-level number ones, which means he can definitely cover a lot of the number twos on these other teams we're going up against. So we've got a solid 1-2 punch at cornerback now in Pittsburgh with Cam Sutton coming back after his suspension 8 weeks in.
Is it
That
8 weeks?
yeah, yeah, he's out until about midway through the season. So the tough part is after Dante Jackson, the depth falls off pretty dramatically at cornerback. There was a lot of hope on Corey Trice Jr. He missed his rookie season last year to an injury, an ACL injury. He just hasn't seemed to be able to find his game again since that injury. And so hopefully he can come around, but we're not seeing that quality we need for him to really be a solid member on this depth chart. Um, Darius Rush, same sort of thing. He's been underwhelming, as has Ryan Watts. He's still a little too green. He's the rookie we drafted this year for corner. It's just none of these guys are really stepping up to show they can be part of this cornerback rotation, that they can be a solid number 3 or somebody that can come in to fill in for Joey Porter or Dante Jackson if there's an injury or if there's some fatigue. So that is definitely a concern. And if this doesn't change over the coming weeks, I really do think we'll see the Steelers look to this free agent list because there are still some good free agents out there that they could bring in to fill this gap until Cam Sutton is able to return from that suspension.
Yeah, it's always good to see that you are getting better. When I always like to say when you're trading with the Carolina Panthers, typically you're going to win the trade because, you know, it's the Panthers.
Right?
But yeah, with Dante Jackson, he was always a really good corner.
He was.
Like, and he was one. I don't know if he was ever one of those guys where you ever looked at him and said he's a top 10 corner, but he was definitely a top 20, top 25 guy consistently, and he was in there where it was like, okay, he's a very consistent and good corner, and to have him with Joey Porter Jr. is going to be a very, very good combination. But again, for like what you said, the depth is going to be the big thing because if
Yes.
one of those guys needs to take a playoff or is, a little bit banged up and can't be out there, that's when it becomes a big situation. And Cam Sutton isn't there for the first 8 weeks. It just makes it even harder. And yeah, there's free agents still out there. But I look at pretty much every free agent that you're going to sign around this time of year. There's a reason that there's still a free agent at this time of the year, in my opinion.
Yes, but at the same time, for what we're looking for them to do, I think they would be a suitable option. Considering what the youth that we have is doing. I mean, like some of the guys that are available, and I mean, feel free to argue with me if you want, but the three I have on my list that I would like the Steelers to go after if this is the route they have to go is J.C. Jackson, still available. That would be a pretty decent number 3. Stephon Gilmore is still out there, which would be a very savvy veteran to add to the mix. And hey, Patrick Peterson's still out there too. He could come back. He knows the playbook. He did well last year. Sure, he lost that starting role to Joey Porter Jr., but JPJ is good.
Yeah.
Patrick Peterson is aging. He's more of a veteran. He's not going to have to be. None of these guys are going to have to be in there every play. They might have to play nickel every now and then, but we've also got a lot of safeties on this roster that are capable of playing that nickel corner spot too. So
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there, and it's like I don't disagree with you. It's just for me, I look at those guys and I go, yes, they're coming in to be that you're kind of number 3, but there's a lot of teams out there that could be looking for a guy to come in to be that number 3, and there's a reason that they haven't signed these guys yet. And again, for me, it's the same reason why I look at any of the edge rushers still available, for the Bears to go after. And I go, sure, they could add him and they might do a little bit, but to be a starting guy or be a rotation guy, that number 3, it might just be worth it just to not even give them that type of deal and just kind of run with what you have. Because this is why that conversation that we were going to potentially have a little bit later was so tricky for me this week. It's just because we are so late in the stage of free agency where it's like, man, like for the Steelers for that number 3 role, I can get it a little bit more, but I'm still more worried about any of those guys coming in.
Oh, 100%. I'm worried too. Like at this stage, something like that is very much a dice roll. This is a gamble move. And that's why you see some of these guys, they're not going to get signed until the end of training camp, until the end of preseason, because, you don't want to bring in a 33-year-old Stephon Gilmore or Patrick Peterson and be like, yeah, you're out there getting reps, you're practicing with these guys. No, we want these young guys to have the opportunities. That's what this is. But if none of those young guys step up to the point where you're looking and going, well, okay, but like these guys, we're not going to be able to put them out there against Cincinnati Bengals number 3 receiver. We're going to get burned if we do.
Yeah.
That's the point where you go, well, if we know we're going to get burned anyway, why don't we roll the dice on one of these veterans, bring them in, and hope for the best? Because really, we're hoping for the best, or we don't bring him in and we know we're getting the. So that's sort of where I'm at with the free agency is,
Yeah,
if
and
you
and
if you have to
I'm
bring
in agreement with you with
yeah,
that
if
one. Yeah,
you have to bring one of these guys in to be your number one,
you're
like
screwed.
you're screwed. Like that's sort of where I feel like the Bills are at their wide receiver position right now. They're screwed.
Yeah.
And so that's the situation where we're at the cornerback spot. Honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of other stuff to talk about with the defense for this team because it is a top defense in this league.
Yep.
The linebacking core looks great. The edge rushers are excellent. This D line is coming together real nicely. Even the safeties look good. It looks good. And back to the offense, the O line has looked great. It finally looks like we're going to have a solid offensive line to start and be ready to go week 1. We've got Troy Fatanu, who has looked excellent in this move to right tackle. He looks so comfortable. He looks like that's what he's been playing this whole time. He's opening up holes for the run game. He's pass blocking really well on the opposite side, which has allowed Broderick Jones to get back home at left tackle, and he just looks like he's so comfortable being back there. And my God, this O-line, the only question mark we still have is Zach Frazier at center. He has looked good, though. That being said, he looks better than the centers we have had in the last couple seasons.
Wasn't it Mason Cole? Your
Yeah.
center? Yeah.
Mason Cole and I think it was was it JC Hausnauer who filled in a few roles here and there.
Yeah, not terribly important. Yeah.
Right. It's not important guys, not guys who are big names, not guys who are starters on other teams right now. This is so good to see, and they're coming together as a unit as well. We had the first fight break out at Steelers camp this week, and we always talk. There's always fights breaking out at training camps. Is it going to be a good thing? Is it going to be a bad thing? This was a good fight. This was offense against defense fight. This wasn't positional guys fighting each other. This is the fight I like to see. I think it was Marcus Golden. He hit Justin Fields on one of the plays where Justin Fields rolls out. You're not supposed to be hitting quarterbacks in training camp. And he fucking laid into Justin Fields and was like, welcome to the AFC North, I think. And oh my God, the O-line came to his defense, and there was a scuffle breaking out, and they were going at it. And I love to see it because there wasn't any animosity. There was no punches being thrown or nothing. It was just getting up in each other's face going, don't touch my fucking quarterback like that. And I love to see it because, as we talked about, we don't know if Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback, but this O-line is still
treating him like he's the quarterback.
They're still defending him. And the defense is coming to Golden's back and going, I mean, dude ran outside the pocket. We're not just going to let him free run down the field. We know what kind of jets Justin Fields has. If he wants to break contain in training camp when he should be throwing fucking passes, then he's going to get lit up.
Yep.
He needs to get this in his head because otherwise Roquan Smith is going to dismantle him. Myles Garrett is going to decapitate him. He needs to be smarter about this, is what Marcus Golden is trying to drill into him there. And so this was a fight
I agree with you.
I love to see. This was an excellent one. And honestly, I think all this did was bring this team together and light that fire. I'm excited to see the product that this Pittsburgh Steelers team is going to put out on week 1 because it feels like the most cohesive unit we have had in 6 or 7 years, to be honest with you, since we started the mess of Antonio Brown falling apart and Juju Smith-Schuster. It feels like this team is coming together. The only diva we've got that could cause us some problems is George Pickens. And this organization has shown that if he wants to be that way, they will ship him out so fucking fast. So he needs to make sure he's not putting a target on his back in that locker room. And he needs to just go out there and prove that he wants to be a number 1 and prove that he can be a number 1 with his play, not with his whining.
I saw a shit post from someone talking about the Steelers fight, and he said, funny enough, this was actually a fight between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Justin Fields threw a pass, looked over at Russell Wilson and said, how does it feel to be the most expensive backup in the NFL? And then Russell Wilson goes over and slaps him. And I'm just laughing. It's clearly this shit isn't true. You can see Russell Wilson in the background of the video. And it's it was just hilarious shit post. But yeah, It's going to be an interesting team to watch. I have no issues with the defense. Again, as long as your secondary can stay healthy, they should be good. TJ Watt stays healthy.
And really, the secondary just has to stay healthy long enough for Cam Sutton to come back from that suspension, and then we've got a solid nickel in there. And then, granted, the health needs to stay the rest of the year, but I'm hopeful because I don't think this defense is going to be as exhausted as they were last season with Matt Canada and Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky just not being able to do anything with it. I'm not excited about Arthur Smith still, but I do think he's going to call a better offense than what we saw last year. He's at the very least going to be able to score some points and keep the defense off the field a little bit longer to let them catch their breath more, which will just make them that much more dominant and fearsome when they're out there.
He's an upgrade over Matt Canada, like saying an upgrade from, the clay crayons to like pencil crayons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not shopping at Kmart anymore. I'm shopping at Walmart now.
You're not shopping at the Dollar Tree. You're making the jump to Walmart. It's a big step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're still looked at as the white trash, but
Hey, that's okay. I mean, we can be. You know what? When people overlook the Steelers in this AFC North, those are the seasons we have the best years. When we're overlooked, those are the ones where all of a sudden we win the division. So by all means, sleep on this Steelers team all year long.
You know me. I have no issues with the Steelers, with the exception of Arthur Smith and the uncertainty of quarterback.
Yeah, and I don't mean you. I'm more talking to the rest of the NFL and the rest of the AFC North. Go ahead, sleep on the Steelers all you want, because all that's going to do is make it an easier path for us to win this division.
Yeah, it's your team should be very, very interesting to watch. There's probably going to be a lot of frustration, but there's also going to be times of where pure excitement.
Yeah, well, it's early on revenge tour, so they're it's either going to be a hot, fast start for this team, or it is going to be a dumpster fire where we just write off the season by week 4.
Yeah,
because I mean, we got the Falcons in week 1, and then we got the Broncos in week 2 or 3. So it's revenge tour for Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson right off the bat. They are going to want to win those games, or it's not going to look good.
Yep. It's going to be interesting to say the least, my friend.
But yeah, I mean that's the Steelers training camp as I've seen thus far. Some positives, a couple of negatives, some concerns, but I mean that's pretty typical for this time of year. That you're going to have some bumps in the road. So here's hoping they can pull it all together and win some games this season. I'm fucking excited to see what we got going forward. How have your Bears been looking though?
When it comes to the offensive side of things, the receiving game, the running back game, the tight ends, it's all been extremely positive. There hasn't been really any negatives to really talk about. Again, with guys like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Romo Dunze, it's hard to not really like what you see from those guys. They're all doing really, really well. Cole Kmet is looking like he's going to try to solidify himself as a top 5 tight end this year. He's been really, really solid. And Caleb, he is just impressing everyone. It's basically going out like, he might have a bad play, but the next play he does something where everyone's jaw is on the floor and they're like, okay, just one sec, guys. We need to all recollect ourselves here because of some of the throws that he's making and, his willingness to learn and get better every single play, essentially, of going like he could have a great day and it's going, that's not good enough. He's a perfectionist that is extremely hard on himself and he always wants to be better and better and better. The concern right now is kind of the O-line. There's been some injury concerns there. Braxton Jones, our left tackle, missed the first couple of days. A lot of them are more precautionary injuries. The one thing I do like about Eberflus and his staff is that they will look at a guy and go, we're not going to force a guy if there's something. We'd rather be precautious with this and really just try to make sure that he's more healthy, because what's the point of overworking guys at this point of the year if they're not fully healthy? Nate Davis has been out. Darnell Wright wasn't in the starting role today, so he's dealing with a little bit something. So for me, there's some concerns with that, but again, I always kind of had concerns with the offensive line anyways. That was kind of the only real area that I was particularly worried about. Yeah, nothing I really look at as anything shocking. We knew Caleb was going to come in and he was going to throw a couple of interceptions, which is going to get the, what I like to call the former Justin Fields truthers out there going like, oh, well, he's clearly not ready. And, it's like, yeah, it's training camp, guys. Who gives a shit if he throws a pick? I don't care if he throws 5 picks in preseason games. Like, let him test stuff. Like this is the guy that he is the mad scientist. He's in a new lab. Let him throw some shit together and see what happens. Because again, my whole thing with Caleb Williams this year, and the getting a little bit off of topic with this one, is I would rather him be a little bit more reckless with the ball this season and allowing him to test out what he can get away with in the NFL, and him to have 30 passing touchdowns and let's say 10 interceptions with close to 4,000 yards, as opposed to him trying to tone it down a little bit and have 24 to 26 passing touchdowns and 6 or 7 interceptions. And I'm like, let's like he was drafted to be a combination of Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Let him go do that. Let's not coach him out of stuff. And it sounds like the Bears, they're allowing him to do that. They're saying, listen, we want you to go do what you are good at and what you are special at, but do it. If you make a bad play, learn why you did it and try to adjust from it. And that's what they've been doing with him. They're not coaching out that magician out of him. They're allowing him, they're saying, we want you to play in structure, which Caleb also has said he wants to play in structure, but they're not saying to him, don't do any of that crazy stuff that we saw at USC and Oklahoma. They're going, if you're going to do it, make sure you're making the right decision. And if you get it wrong, learn from it, move on to the next play. And that's what he's done.
Yeah, and I agree completely. That is exactly what the Bears need to be doing with Caleb Williams, is letting him be himself and do his thing. And you said 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Honestly, I still think it would be a success if you double that interception number. Even if it's 30 touchdowns and 20 interceptions, if he's learning from those mistakes and still playing his game, I still think that's a step in the right direction. And that's the way to do it. You let the quarterback run his game in that first season, and then in year 2 you come to him and you go, okay, look, this is what you did right. This is what we felt you did wrong. We want you to start playing more of this kind of structure and tone this down. And then in year 2, that's what you do. You play more to what the coaching staff wants to do for that quarterback, and you tone down that play. And then in year 3, you merge those together and you go, okay, look, you did it your way, you did it our way. Now you go out there and you take the best of both of those worlds and you win us a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't even necessarily think that the 20 interceptions, like, I would be pretty disappointed with the 20 interceptions. I know you're just kind of using that as a broad example, but I look at it and go, I would rather him be a little bit more loose and kind of doing the things that made him great at college, at the college level, and translate that over to the NFL. If it means, having to deal with a couple more turnovers, if it's one of those things of where it's like, every game he's throwing 3 passing touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, I'm going to be disappointed in that. I will be fair because, the big thing with him is, he looks at Aaron Rodgers and he wants to mimic Aaron Rodgers. And one of the best things about him in college is he didn't throw a lot of interceptions. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. If he throws, double digit, gets up into 10, I'm fine with that. It's a rookie season, whatever. But as long as that, like the team is allowing him to do stuff. On the defensive side of things, the secondary, they're just basically coming out here and saying, we're the best secondary in the league, and it's not even close. Like, people are saying that they're the next Legion of Boom. They're like, no, we're better than that. Like they're all looking at it, and Caleb Williams had a comment where he was throwing a pass to Keenan Allen, and Tyreek Stevenson, our number 2 corner, just absolutely mossed him, and all Caleb could do was just run over to Tyreek Stevenson and goes, I don't know how you got that, but thank you for making me better. And it was just they're just like, you just look at the secondary, it's like they can do no wrong. They're the best secondary in football. They're gonna be the best secondary in football. Linebackers are doing their thing. Defensive line, Montez Sweat. This is one thing that really gets me excited. Is people are talking about him about the same type of year when Khalil Mack really went off for that one of those years with the Bears, where it was just like, you just can't stop him. Like, there's nothing that anyone can do to stop him. He got kicked out of practice because he hit Caleb Williams. And I looked at that and I went, good job, Matt Eberflus, for looking at your defensive star and going, don't you touch my new fucking Ferrari.
Yeah.
And Montez, he didn't get upset. He goes, I get it. My bad.
Yep.
Javon Dexter has looked insanely impressive. To me, this has been the biggest story out of Bears camp this year, is how Javon Dexter, our second-year rookie, or second-year D tackle. Last year, I looked at him and went, you know what, second-round pick, I'm not going to put too much expectation on him. He came out of college with the pro comparison of Chris Jones, and he's starting to kind of get that feel of, like, every single day you're just hearing more and more of he's getting into the backfield, and it looks easy. And if Javon Dexter can start to get into the backfield and be that disruptive D tackle that we saw, there's talks that this Bears defense could easily be a top 3 defense. I think they're a top 10. I think they're a borderline top 10 defense. I'm not willing to put them into the top 5 yet. I think they're probably on the kind of outskirts of the top 10, probably in that 11th. But if Javon Dexter can take that next step with Montez Sweat,
yep.
Matt Eberflus' defense relies on that 3 tech. And if you have a solid, demanding, dominant 3 tech, that's what makes his defense run. And we already saw how good that defense was without a dominant 3 tech last year. And if he can make that next step, I'm excited. And everything that I've heard about him is he is just dominating.
Yeah, and that particular position is so important in your division right now. Like, he needs to take that next step, because he's going to be tasked with stopping guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones. Like, there's a lot of talent at the running back position in that division that he's going to have to be getting into the backfield, as you said, and disrupting those run plays, filling those gaps that are opening up, and making sure that those backs do not get to the second level. So yeah, that will be a key if he does make that next step. That's good news for that Bears D line. And I said it a few weeks ago about Montez Sweat when we were making some of our predictions. I fully expect him to be in the high double digits for his sacks this year. He is going to be a force.
Only an 84 in Madden though, so you clearly can't be that good.
Madden bullshit.
Yeah. Well, that's a discussion, like I said, we'll probably have into the future. But yeah, that's really what has been the biggest noise for Bears training camp. It's again, the highlight has been, what is Caleb Williams doing? And he has good days, he has bad days, and when there's a bad day, Bears fandom, I always like to look at it like this, the Bears fans that are realistic are the ones that, they liked Justin Fields, but they knew that it was time to move on. And the Bears fans that are going like, oh, he needs to set, every rookie record. It's like, those are the guys that were mad that Justin Fields is gone, and they were the Justin Fields truthers. And it's like, you're seeing on some of the bad days, those guys start to pop up going like, it's like, guys, what did Patrick Mahomes do in his first year as a starting quarterback? So year number 2, all you heard from training camp was he's throwing a lot of interceptions, guys.
But that's just it. That's the time to make those mistakes. Make those mistakes in training camp, not in week 3.
I would rather see Caleb Williams throw 50 interceptions during preseason and training camp, and then go out there and know what he can't do. And it's not like he's going up against a weak-ass secondary. He's going up against the best secondary in football. Going up against the best corner in football.
right? That's
Like,
such a good thing to have for sure. And all those Justin Fields truthers out there, if any of you are watching, anytime Caleb Williams has a bad day and you go, oh, we should have kept Justin Fields, flip over and go watch Steelers training camp and see what Justin Fields is doing. And you're going to go, oh, yeah, this is the same shit we watched for the last 3 years. As
yeah,
I said earlier, like I still have high hopes for Justin Fields.
me
Sure,
too.
he
Me
could
too.
still be good, but seeing what he's done, he's still not on the same level as Caleb Williams at this point. So, like, stop being little bitches and roll with what your team's got. Your team is one of the biggest on the rise teams in the league right now, and probably has the highest ceiling of any team in the NFL at the moment. And it's looking good for Bears fans at this point.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are talking about the Bears being comparable to the Texans last year. The team that I actually want to compare them to from last year was the Lions, because the Lions had a lot of hopes with them, but no one thought they were going to do the things that they were going to do. Now, do I think the Bears are going to be a 13-4 team like the Lions were a year previous? No. I think the Bears are a 10-win team, and I think next week we're probably going to do our season predictions, kind of like what we do every year, of where we'll go through every single game. Both of us will give the predictions for each of our teams for the actual schedule and kind of break it down. Funny enough, we were both correct. Like I think you got your Steelers perfectly, I got my Bears perfectly, and we were both fairly close with our predictions about the other person's team.
Yeah, it was. I think what it was is just there were a couple instances where it was like, oh well, that one was a loss instead of a win, but this one was a win. But that's what it was.
Exactly,
The,
yeah.
the final records ended up being what we were predicting for sure, because I predicted the Steelers to get, what was it, 10 wins and make the playoffs, and they
I
did.
said the Bears were going to get 7, and they did.
Yeah.
It was a lot more of a frustrating 7 than I wanted it to be, but we got 7. Like, the fact that, like, I think we should really go back and rewatch that video and just kind of, like, just pinpoint it and just go, man, like, we were fucking bang on about our predictions with this team. And
I mean, we're fans of our teams, and we're not bandwagoners. We've been fans of these teams for a long time. So even when the rest of the league and the analysts are shitting on our teams or overhyping our teams, we still are able to look at it with a level head and go, well, no, we know what kind of product our organization puts out regularly. Granted, yours is changing its philosophies a little bit and changing its trajectory. Even with your comparison to the Detroit Lions, honestly, I still think better. Like, people that are comparing you to the last year's Texans, I think this year's Bears team is better than any of the up and coming teams last year. This is the best improved team we have seen in probably decades.
and that
Because
scares the shit out of me.
understandably so, because while I said the ceiling is so high, that just means the fall is so great if it doesn't work out, which has got to be scary. But at the same time, being a Steelers fan, storied organization, great history, great record of winning, I'm jelly. I wish my team had what yours has right now, because like you guys have so much talent there, and my team's just, yeah, we've got one of the best defenses, but our offense is sorely lacking at the moment.
Yeah.
That's why I said it early on. I really want to get this Najee Harris deal done, because I think he's the guy that we need to be building this offense around over the next 3 years.
Yeah. Like the best way to describe both of our teams here is that the Steelers are probably going to have the better record, but the hope and the optimism is going to be higher with the Bears than it is with the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. And I don't know. I think we're going to have pretty similar records this year. I think the Steelers might. I'm probably going to predict them with a higher record than they actually get this year, because they have a very tough schedule this year as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see what Pittsburgh does. They're going to have to put out a perfect product on offense in order for that defense to thrive and feast the way I know they can.
Yeah, and I guess we're pretty much just teasing exactly what's going to be coming up next week of when we do our actual game predictions. And again, we're not going to be looking at this when we do our predictions every week of going, oh, this is what we said at this point. It's always kind of the feel of the situation because it changes week to week.
Oh,
But
100%.
yeah, that is all we have here today, unless Sterling, you want to chat about anything else. But first, Sterling, I'm Brendan. We are the OneIQ Football Talk podcast, saying peace.